Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind Body and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair, and today's guest is a clarity catalyst and coach. He supports purpose-driven change makers and entrepreneurs to clarify their purpose, own their genius, and heal the world with their unique gifts. He uses his Awaken method, a combination of left brain strategies and intuitive capacities to help his clients break through their fear, self-doubt, and feeling not good enough so they can do what they know they came here to do. He works with change makers all over the world who know, oh God, I was doing so good. Hold on. I was doing so good. Hold on.
You still are.
Who knows that the time is now to make their massive contributions and create a life they love. Welcome to the show, Tristan Gutner.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Man.
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. My pleasure, man. Dude, it's so funny. I'm in the middle of reading your intro, and I'm like, oh, dude, I'm killing this. I was like, oh, yeah, I got this. Like, oh, no, I messed it up. Yeah, dude, I really, so you reached out to me via email, and, I had a look at your work. Really interesting bio, really interesting background. Looked in some of the stuff you did and can see you're definitely on the level. We had a really great communication before the podcast. So let's just start with a little bit of background for the audience to know who you are, what you're about, and maybe some of the stuff we're going to talk about today.
Awesome, bro. Thanks for that intro. And I like that little, if you even want to call it a slip up, man, just seeing that pure smile come out. That's why that happened. It was awesome getting to feel your heart through that. From the short background is from the earliest times I can remember being like 3 years old. I was always thinking sort of about the nature of human consciousness, how we function, what it means to be a human in one of these bodies. Other humans are in their bodies and we're seemingly separate. I knew just as a really young child that wasn't really true and that there was a lot more going on under the surface. And really, truly, like some of my earliest memories were just about the nature of consciousness and how this whole thing functions, how the human experience functions. And also from a very early age, I could, as I still can, like feel people's energy and thoughts and emotions as every human being can. I just pay attention more maybe than some people do, but everyone can feel that. And people would be saying words, adults would be talking to me, and their words would be saying one thing, but what I felt, the truth of what they were saying through their energy, through their emotion, and what was being transmitted non-verbally was so much stronger than what they were saying, and typically not aligned with what they were saying, which was like really interesting as a kid. So my whole life I've just been interested in exploring like what it means to be a human being, what our truest capacities and potential are as a human being. And my life has just been really based on developing my own capacities and helping other people develop theirs. And I've been in, if you want to call it, the personal transformation or development industry for a long time, and have taught workshops and led retreats based on meditation and really evolving one's own human experience. And though that bio says a lot of stuff, really truly what I think my job is, as I think everyone's job is in their own way, is by being who I am to help people remember who they truly are, which typically is so much more than what we give ourselves credit for, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So there's more to say, but I keep it brief there.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really appreciate that, the genuine just humbleness. And it's interesting writing a bio, when I'm on podcasts, I was like, this is your bio. It's like, how do you box in the human experience, right? And I really love how you and I are very similar, where I guess, in my way, I was like interested in what humans were capable of, what I was capable of through martial arts. So just questioning consciousness and reality and what people are saying and diving down that rabbit hole and discovering for myself, because most people listening are in Canada, the US. Well, our upbringing is very different than somebody in China who has a martial arts background, or in Africa or if you're a Native American, or if you're European. In every European country, that's why they're so passionate about football, is because every country is so unique. Such a beautiful, deep, long history, their own language, their own music, culture, and they're really proud of that. So they kind of like go nuts when it comes to football because their culture is represented. That's how I saw it anyway when I was there, right? And I love how they just get in these like heated arguments. Like they're all so passionate, but they have also a deep respect for one another, So, I think it's very important that we question these things within ourselves. And as far as history goes, U.S. and Canada is like, doesn't have the same lineage as like European, and then also the native cultures, they're even older. So I guess where I want to start with this, because I think it'll get the ball rolling nicely, is you are a certified Drunvallo Melchizedek trainer.
Yes, yeah. So he has he developed the School of Remembering as the umbrella through which his work moves and is distributed. And so I'm certified to teach his Awakening the Illuminated Heart workshops, as are about I don't know, maybe 250, 300 people around the world.
So can you explain a little bit it sucks I'm not wearing my Flower Life t-shirt. That's just over there, so grab it.
I almost wore mine out too. That's really funny, man.
Yeah. So yeah, do you want to describe a little bit about who he is and what his work is?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot to say about Drunvallo's work, and I couldn't do it justice, maybe ever, but certainly not in just a few minutes. Boom. Is that a ring?
Yeah, I had to grab this ring.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's such a like crazy righteous galactic.
It's very powerful.
You
have to give me the details where you got that.
Yeah, there's a guy in Sedona. Yeah, it's a huge, crazy long story about why and how I have this ring. But yeah. So I was like, I gotta grab the Flower of Life ring. So tell us a little bit more about Drunvallo, because he's
So finding his work, which was maybe about 10 years ago for me, roughly, it was one of the biggest leaps in awareness that I've ever made in a short amount of time. And again, I have almost no way or idea how to encapsulate his work in a short amount of time. But Drunvallo is like, I experience him to be a true explorer of human consciousness. And I see what he's doing as sort of mapping human consciousness from this 3D experience and way out. And one of the things that's really powerful, I think, about Drunvallo's work and why it resonates with so many people all around the world is he has these, really amazing right brain intuitive capacities. He also is like deeply rooted in science, and he has a really strong left brain approach, which I don't particularly need. If something feels accurate and true and good to me, I have always been someone who will just run with it. But a lot of people, especially like you're saying in this culture, I can't speak for Canadian culture, but certainly in the US, and I think probably most of Western culture, most people need to see it before they believe it, rather than believe it and then they'll see it, as Wayne Dyer said. And Drunvallo has been able, using science, to empirically sort of document, for instance, the electromagnetic fields emanating from our heart and around our body. And that's something that for so many people just sounds like new age gobbledygook, and I get why it does. And it's really powerful to see on a screen scientists who aren't really like spiritually oriented documenting that kind of stuff, because it's just showing, quote unquote, empirically, that we're so much more than this physical experience. So I know that's not a great intro to Drunvallo's work, but it's what's coming out right now. And I just have the utmost love and gratitude and respect for Drunvallo, and he's helped me tremendously on my path as a mentor.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a little bit. Well, he really dives a lot into sacred geometry.
He sure does.
So I just watched Nassim Haramein speak. He's all into sacred geometry because geometry goes back to mathematics, and mathematics is the language of the universe. It's like the ultimate thing to understand. There's a reference to God, right? Mathematics is the language of God or something like that. And then that's what sacred geometry is. So do you want to give us, like, when you do one of those workshops, what is somebody experiencing? So the way that I kind of explain sacred geometry to people is, if you were going to go back in time and you go like caveman days, right? And you just go to one of their walls when they're not looking, and you just do a circle, a square, a rectangle, and a triangle, they're not really going to understand what that is, but it's information. So when you look at sacred geometry shapes, like the flower of life, like we got here, like my t-shirt, which I wish I was wearing right now, I was thinking about wearing it, the Merkaba, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, all these different things, you're getting information, but you don't exactly know why. And one of the best examples is when I was at Burning Man 2 years ago, my camp, you know, they're great people, but they're not into like the weirdness as I am. And they kept calling it the ball. And there was like 100-foot flower of life that these Swiss engineers made, and it had lights on it and would fractal in. It was frigging spectacular. And they kept calling it the ball. I was like, guys, that's like a flower of life. Like, do you even understand what that is? So I kept like trying to explain it to them. But even though they didn't know, I knew that they were getting dusted with that information, right? There's a reason why those symbols are where there's information and symbols. So that's my lead into you speaking more about it.
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot to be said, but there's two different trains of thought. On the sacred geometry tip, you know, Drunvallo was really a lot more, as I experienced it, focused on that a little earlier on. And it's a really powerful way for the left brain to come online and start to open up to the greater reality of things, because it's tangible and it's visual, and it's the masculine energy operating through a visual medium. And why it's called sacred geometry is, again, like science can now see, we have these shapes around our body electromagnetically. And again, it's not a concept, it's not an idea. It's like, this is documented. And it's what most ancient traditions have been saying for thousands of years. It's nothing new. It's just now we have the capacities to see it in a different way. And it doesn't necessarily, that knowledge doesn't necessarily have to come through a lifetime of meditation and spiritual insight. But the long and the short of sacred geometry is, you know, it's the building blocks of life. And that's why, hey, hang on 1 second. Let me get up for 10 seconds just to show you something. It's why, you know, as you were mentioning some of them, the, if you can see this, but the platonic solids, and there's little crystalline shapes in here. I could pull out. It doesn't really matter too much, and people can.
Yeah, no, they're cool. Cool, pull them out, man. Pull them out. We'll do like a little thing as you're talking. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, check out the YouTube link to see them, and also sacred geometry.
Yeah, it's not the most effective audio expression, but you know, I'm holding up a pyramid, which is a tetrahedron. Here's a dodecahedron, and you know, I'll hold them all up. Cute.
Yeah, man. I know these shapes, and I am always just just looking at, it's like you know, you listen to sounds, right? Sound is healing. You know, I'm really getting into like a sound healing recently, and shapes are the same thing. It's just resonant, you know?
Yeah, and like you said, man, I think you were saying like using sacred geometry as, I don't know if you put it as the language of God, but that's what we're starting to realize. And it's what these ancient spiritual traditions have known forever. Thousands of years of documentation with science is now starting to realize. And we were talking about Marco Rodin's work and all this sacred mathematics. We're starting to just be able to document really clearly that sound and math and sacred geometry and these inner experiences that people are having, they're all saying the same thing. And it's starting to show that the universe isn't random at all. I'm not saying everything is predetermined by any means, but there's a structure, there's underlying structures. And when you can see that mathematics line up perfectly with sound, and music lines up perfectly with these little shapes that are the building blocks of all life, physical and otherwise, the mind, the left brain does start to come online and say, like, can we curse on this? Should I not curse?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I try to keep it minimal so I don't have to put the explicit. The last podcast,
I'll catch myself.
I haven't had to do it. I say the F-bomb sometimes and shit and things like that. But I had this Alexandra Roxo on. She's dropping F-bombs all over the place. I was like, this is the first time I need to make a mental note in the show notes, explicit. And it's just like this sweet little girl, and then bam, you know, just like divine feminine and like masculine in one. So
it's perfect. Well, those words, all words have power, and those words have a unique power. I was gonna say, just the left brain comes online and goes, holy shit, like I can now see physically in a pretty irrefutable way that there's these consistent structures across all these different experiences. And the geometry in the human body, Drunvallo talks a lot about this, the geometry in the human body is reflected in the geometry and the growth pattern of all plants and all animals, and the way celestial bodies are moving. And again, it's not just these new age ideas. It's like, this is mathematically and scientifically, quote unquote, proven. So something does start to wake up for a lot of people when they see that the underlying structure of all these things is the same, and it certainly implies divine design. So that's like the sacred geometry piece, and the piece that the workshops that I teach of Drunvallo's work, The Awakening the Illuminated Heart, is really based, as the title explains or alludes to, actually like a really feminine experience of moving your consciousness out of here and into a very specific place in the heart called the tiny space of the heart. That was, as far as documentation goes, was first talked about in the Upanishads, thousands of years ago. It's these people who had found a way to go into their heart. And it's that place in the heart is the nexus point where all of creation comes together, or at least where we have very easy access to all of those places. So those 4 days just look like a lot of meditation and a lot of really getting quiet and getting still and going into the heart in this deeply feminine place where we start to become really powerfully receptive to what's going on around us, stuff we don't usually notice because we're in the more masculine energy and space of trying to figure everything out. So that's what in a nutshell, that's what that work looks like. What I wanted to say actually, man, about that is one of the reasons I've pivoted a little bit in the last couple of years and focused a little more on my coaching practice is there's one of the days is of that 4-day workshop is really focused on healing. It's really, really profound, deeply beautiful, and people have truly life-changing moments. And one of the things that I've heard Drunvallo say about that day is if you're carrying around a lot of emotional trauma or a lot of really powerful limiting beliefs about who you are, what you're capable of, or what's possible, that will severely limit one's experience of how deeply they can receive that particular healing and how deeply they're going to be able to really dive into this world, because that work is really subtle and it starts to reveal to you a lot more about yourself. So what I started to notice, the work itself is so beautiful, and certain people will go so deep with it. Other people would struggle a lot more, and they'd stay much more on the surface just because they were holding a lot in their physical body and in their emotional body that just hadn't been processed yet, and it kept them locked in a certain place. And I became really interested in helping people move through those blocks, and while they're moving through those blocks, also get to experience this other piece up here. So I found myself, and I find myself really interested in where the left brain and the right brain experience really meet. And like you and I were talking before we flipped on the mics, giving someone a really grounded experience that's repeatable continually of feeling an expanded sense of their self, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So, we were talking a little bit about integration, right? The importance of integration, because you and I, we're able to access these states, or have had these experiences and gone down these rabbit holes of really next level stuff. And, the way that I talk about it is like, ayahuasca can give you a taste of that, Burning Man can give you a taste of that. But then if you don't do anything about it and you just run the pattern, we're in such an important time in history right now. And, ultimately don't worry about everyone else, like yourself, like, really, is that the life that you want to live? And it's just like this treadmill and like get a job and be secure. Like, that's not what human is being about. Just because every single other person you see is doing it doesn't mean you got to do it, but actually have a look. And there's a ton of people who are not doing that. Tons of different realities you can live on. Like the one example I give is you could be in war. You could sign up for the army, and you could be in a reality where people are shooting at you, people are dying, your legs are getting blown off. Like, that's a reality you can choose on this earth, and that's your free will choice. You could also live in the beach in peace with just working at like a coffee shop down the road in Nicaragua. I know people who do that. I know people who do it in Cambodia. They literally live on the beach, and they have what people fly around the world for their vacation as their home. One of my buddies was a snowboard instructor with me in Whistler, and now he's a scuba dive instructor, and he lives in the most beautiful islands in the world, and that's his daily reality, is like underwater, beach, bliss. So you can have any reality you want. You don't, it's just such a fake matrix, as Seven Bomar puts it. So do you want to talk a little bit about just some of your processes, like how do people from where they are, like step one, like give like a little segue how we go and then how we start to integrate it, some of your tools or what you teach.
Yeah, sure, man. You it's a beautiful segue talking about your friends and yourself too, man, who have made these really different lifestyle choices that certainly like, have challenges. But what I hear you saying in that is like, they found something that they feel really happy doing, that they love. It fills up their heart. And they're probably when you see pictures of them, probably all smiles, that light is in their eyes, they're awake, they're embodied, they're ready to rock. And for me, I feel like it's the greatest gift we can give of our lives. Like our purpose with a capital P, as far as I experience it and see those around me experiencing it. Yeah, it may have to do with like specific livelihoods, but the livelihood doesn't really matter. It's like how we're coming to that livelihood. And if we're committed to feeling good and to our joy, to me, that when I'm committed to that, let me just speak personally. When I feel good and I'm doing what I love, that allows me to show up for the world or show up for individuals in the highest possible way that I'm capable of doing. And like you said earlier, like if I'm not tending to that in myself, it diminishes my capacity to help anybody and to do what I'm here to do. So just like a segue into that is like, bottom line, I just encourage people to just like do something they love. And when people are not in a position financially, let's say, maybe they have a desk job that they feel for them is not their highest and best, and it feels draining to them, and they're not seeing a smooth way out of that, and they have a family that might be dependent upon them financially, still just taking all the moments they can to feel good about their life. And that's something that I'm working with really actively, like in my own life right now. Like I love doing this. I love working with my clients. I love these bigger picture things, but there's a whole lot of hours that I'm not doing those things in the day. And like, where am I focused and what's going on? And I'm really cluing into like when shit's popping off in my life, emotionally or otherwise, and I'm reacting to it and I don't feel good, just taking a second to just find something that feels satisfying and that I feel grateful for. As simple as like, oh wow, it feels really good to sit up straight right now. Just caught myself like not doing that. And the second I do that, energy's flowing up and down my spine. I feel better. I'm naturally like wanting to smile. So yeah, that's just one of the first pieces is no matter what's going on in someone's life, knowing that there's these little micro adjustments we can make to focus on feeling good in the moment. So having said that, I think your question was like just talking about some strategies or approaches I use. Is that true? Cool.
Wait, hold on. I just want to add on that. So sorry to cut you off. You just made a point that I just want to touch on is Tony Robbins talks about it all the time, is changing your physiology. Yeah. So you got to change your state. So you got to think about your body as actually a separate thing. This is something that I'm really getting a lot of from different teachers that I'm following, which is Seven Bomar, Core Love, who like very few people know about, who's a super multidimensional wild guy, Dan Winter. But your body has infinite intelligence, right? So you change your body and then you smile or something, or you move it. Tony Robbins always like, change your body, change your physiology, because you look at people who slouch all the time and, that's how they feel. You see somebody, and I've seen like, example, I was at the Conscious Media Festival and there's this woman, and like, she's not somebody who I would find, traditionally like attractive in like the way that I find, women personally like visually attractive. Mm-hmm. But the way that she moved was like, holy crap, man. Like the way that she just carried herself was just like, wow, like that woman is put together, and it was super attractive. Like, in a pure sense, not like, my old college days sense. It was like, whoa, like a really beautiful put together woman. And that's why they talk about body language and how that, you see a guy getting a girl, but they can fake it on like that level. But when it's like real and genuine and empowered and you're doing it, right? Like, oh, I sit up, and I exude love from a balanced state. It's really powerful. So, changing your state, first of all, changing your physiology. And that's why, the body, taking care of your temple is super important. So I just want to touch on that, making those micro adjustments. And we could actually talk a little bit about you going to see Abraham Hicks. Sure. Which is super exciting because Abraham Hicks woo, woo. She's so, yeah. She's so awesome. So now I'm ranting. But one of the methods that Abraham has is just feel a little bit better. So like moving up the scale of emotion, right? And that's what we're talking about here is this emotional scale. So if you go in your daily basis and your emotional scale is like a 5 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10 or a 9 out of 9 out of 10, it's your responsibility to go get there, you know? So they say, you know, Abraham Hicks is like, go from rage to like just anger. That's a good little step, you know, even from anger to like really frustrated, from frustrated to, I don't know, pissed off or whatever, just slowly, well, you know, and then eventually get to kind of like frustrated, then at peace, and then moving up, just a little micro adjustment, as you said. So that'll be the end of my rant. And then you take some of that.
That's all perfect. Yeah, using I work with the body a ton because like you said, maybe you didn't say this, but it's how I was thinking about it anyways and interpreting it. The body is not only a barometer for exactly what's going on for us, meaning when I feel shitty in any way, shape, or form, my body's going to reflect that. Either it's going to be constricted, it's going to be in pain, I'll be breathing shallow. As you said, my shoulders might be collapsed. I'm not smiling, my neck, whatever is going on. But the second the body doesn't feel good, it's like the alarm system saying like, hey man, something's really out of whack here, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or otherwise. And let's get that stuff aligned and balanced. And then the body always feels better. So it's not only the barometer, but then like you're saying, it's also the pathway to feeling better. And like Tony says, like change your state and you change your physiology, and all the emotions start to come back online too. And all the ideas and your thought process starts to come back online in a balanced way. And with a lot of the people I work with, I don't like to dwell in past narrative really at all, because typically I don't find it very helpful to look backwards. I like to know a little bit about what someone's experience that I'm working with. It just helps me understand where they're coming from a little bit more. But I don't find it helpful, nor do I ask people to relive, okay, what was going on when you're 5? Tell me all about that stuff. And like, let's go back into the muck together, because that's just like re-triggering pain. But what I do use the body for, certain people, like if you and I work together right now, we just did like a laser session. You're someone who's like really in tune with his body. You know where energy is flowing or not flowing. You're sensitive emotionally. You know where your emotions are at, and you'd be able to dive in really deep. A lot of people are just not like that though. But I think everyone is like that. Certain people just haven't discovered that yet in themselves. So I use the body as that barometer. And when someone's really stuck, I use the body to help them just dive in. So I just ask, like, what's going on for you right now? Like, and one of the ways that I work is from a really young age, maybe forever, but just I can only remember to a certain point, I can feel other people's like thoughts, feelings, emotions in my own body. Especially when we're in a session, something really happens where we connect. And so I can just feel like, okay, there's grief in that person's lungs, and that grief is ready to move. That's why it's being presented to me. And I just have people breathe into that part of their body. It's so simple. There's no mind involved at all. The trick is most people want to have their mind involved, and including myself. You know, our subconscious mind is in many ways our protector, and it's constantly trying to like steer us away from danger. And it thinks that approaching this thing that we've shoved down for so long is going to be dangerous, if not fatal. So the mind starts to kick in. But let's just ask people, like, stop the narrative, man. I don't care what happened. I don't care who you're thinking about. I don't care even what you call the emotion is irrelevant. But there's just energy there. And that energy is ready to move just by us being aware of it. So I ask people to use their own body to guide them into that experience, to help the energy move for them. So it's really simple, man. It is nothing complex. It's simple. It's not always easy though, because of this amazing tool of the mind that we have that's just been running like a wild beast, rampaging through the proverbial village, starting to bring that thing. So I have no idea if I just answered your question at all. It's one of the strategies, getting people in touch with their body, because it always, as you said, it's infinitely wise, and it will show us exactly what we need every time if we can stop the chatter long enough to listen.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's important just to say to the listeners that you are your own master. You can tune into your own body. You do not need a guide to do that. That's one of the things that, the good coaches and people know is like, we're empowering you to do it yourself because you have to be the master. Like I'm just a reflection of you. When I do my coaching, like if I can do it in an hour or 2 hours, and I've been able to do that before, give people like almost everything that I know in an hour. You know what I mean? It's just like if you want to do fitness or something like that, give them a good workout plan and go follow it. If I do all your squats for you, you're not going to do it, right? It's really about empowering yourself and be like, okay, like what if you were your own coach for a week and you didn't have me? But because I've done a lot of work and I've gone through the stages, I'm able to see where they are and like, oh, I have this issue. Well, like I used to have that issue, but I don't anymore, or I'm still working through it because it's not like flick your fingers and then it's done and then you're just floating on a cloud of love, which I wish it was.
It'd be so boring if it was, though.
Right, yeah, and catalysts and challenges allow us to learn and grow. So let's talk a little bit about your Abraham Hicks experience because I am excited to know about what happened there, man. It's one of my bucket lists. I really hope I get to catch her sometime.
I know you will, bro. Say that again, the last piece.
And also explain who she is too, because people may not know.
Yeah, sure. You might even be able to speak to that better than I can. Because the Abraham Hicks material is something that's been floating in my sphere for probably 10 plus years, and I'll check it out every 2 years. For some reason, about 3 weeks ago, it was really time to do a little bit of a deep dive, and this event happened to be happening in my hometown. So the Abraham material is Esther Hicks. This multidimensional consciousness is coming to this woman named Esther Hicks, and it's a group consciousness. I don't really know their backstory very much, but it's a lot of wisdom that's non-physically based being expressed by this woman, Esther Hicks, sharing it. And your timing's impeccable, man. I'm really impressed with your level of listening, whether you were conscious of it or not. Because the number one thing one of the number one things they were saying, it was a huge takeaway for me, was they were so focused on the greatest gift you can ever give someone or be for someone is to empower someone through your own example to be their own guide. And like you said, we're not here to be guides. Even if we're coaches or teachers or mentors or whatever it is, the greatest gift we can do is do our own work. And when we're in a session with a client or whoever it is that we're working with, yeah, we're going to teach them strategies and stuff. But the real gift is teaching them strategies to be their own guide. And that was I know that intellectually, as we all do, and something just landed really, really deeply for me with that one. And that's how my business and my practice is oriented already. And I'm even more inspired to ramp up that piece and streamline the strategies to just say, like, here it is. This is what I do for myself. It's how I maintain and how I uplift myself. And talking about the body mechanics and the body approach that I use with people, it's, as I said, it's so simple. I just explained it in 2 minutes. And most people when they hear that are like, yeah, that sounds great, man, but it has to be total bullshit if you can explain it that quickly. And that's something that simple could change my whole life. But it does. And that's what that practice is, to just give someone the keys to their own kingdom and let them do the discovering for themselves. So that was a huge takeaway. As I was saying to you before we recorded, the energy is so powerful in that room. And I had the opportunity to be in the hot seat. So sitting on a stage in front of like 400 or 500 people on a microphone, interacting with this group consciousness. And my mind's having a little bit of trouble tracking and remembering the information imparted because the energetic transmission is so powerful. And even that phrase, I don't know if that means anything to anybody listening, but what I could say in a very clear way, not speaking in these washy terms or washy terminology, is the level of joy coursing through my body during that experience, and especially being on that stage, is and was so profound. And I'm still really integrating and digesting that, but I was really filled with this feeling of ultimate satisfaction and gratitude, and just those moments where all is well. There's just nothing out of balance. Even though I was up there to ask questions about things that felt confusing or out of balance in my life. So they, in my experience, they're master teachers of reclaiming our own sovereignty And, as they said in this workshop, and I've heard them say many times, we're not teaching anything new. We've been saying the same stuff for like 25 or 30 years. We just say it in all these different ways so you guys can finally grasp it. And obviously their work is very, very based around using our mind as the tool that it is, rather than letting it run our lives, but just using it as a tool and nothing more.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I love that you got the hot seat. I think I would be stunned too. And it's interesting because I heard about Bashar, who's another channel. So if you don't know who Bashar is, go check him out. Bashar and Abraham, and people in the audience talk. One of them at Abraham asks about Bashar, and then vice versa. Somebody Bashar asks about Abraham, and what they say, they're both congruent. Is that Bashar answers like Abraham, or no, sorry, I remember the Abraham answer. Bashar was he's a little bit more specific. We're a little bit more general. We're like we're bringing you in. We're not laser hammering you with ETs and multidimensional consciousness and really deep concepts. We're kind of like laying it on you as like a base level. And Bashar is a little bit more of a specific tuned. Like we're going to give you a little bit more detail. Hey, we're going to talk about the ocean, and then, Bashar is going to go into coral reefs and what's in the coral reefs and algae and things like that. Some people aren't ready, and like this is what they're offering. And really on the mass consciousness scale, most people are barely ready for Abraham. Yes. You know what I mean? Then alone Bashar. Somebody asked us, like, how many different races of DNA do humans have? And he goes, 14. And he goes, well, and you can find this on YouTube. And then he goes, well, 7, but some of them are mixed. You know what I mean? Like, that's some heavy material for you to hear. And you're like, okay, like, is this bullcrap or what? But then, through your own research, you can go down the rabbit hole and discover. And the thing is, man, you can do this in several ways. But people aren't doing any of the practices. Most people aren't taking care of their body. Most people are watching the news. You gotta shut off TV. For friggin' mother F, every swear word in the book times a million. Shut off the mother effing TV.
Please.
Oh my God. So I was watching Corey Good. So I was at Cosmic Disclosure, Cosmic Awakening in Sedona. Really amazing conference. Corey Good was there. There's a native elder, Clifford Mahudi was there. He's the whole elder for southern USA. You know what I mean? Like native culture, old lineage, really amazing. Just an amazing group of people. So Corey Good's up there, and he's talking about his daughters. Like, how does your work affect your family? Because he's the main guy on Cosmic Disclosure. He was former secret space program. It's pretty intense stuff, man. And I've only gotten into it the last few months, and that cleared up so much alien stuff for me, ETs, because I was like, ETs, like, do they exist? Like, what's going on? It's all vague information. How do I haven't seen one personally, but like, what I understand of the galaxy and the universe, probably, like, holy smokes, it's massive. And we're actually a dumbass species, in my opinion. Like, we're blowing each other up. You've got jails, like something's wrong here. So we're definitely not the smartest ones in the galaxy. I know that. So him and give me a lot of clear information around what's going on with different races and stuff, and take it with a grain of salt, but it resonates. And Dolores Cannon so many people. Nassim Haramein talks about it. Nassim Haramein's an astrophysicist. I know this guy Gerald Clark. We shooting protons or information through brick walls for IBM, and had $80,000 a month to spend as a budget. Guy's a genius. Traced back, alien. Like, you can't debate. Like, try and debate that guy. He's a million times smarter than me. So is Nassim Haramein. So, but roll it around in your heart. One of the things that's really long-winded to say the point that Corey Good was up there, and he's just like talking about his kid, and then he's dropping his kid off at school, and he goes, "Daddy, you're taking me to prison, right?" And Corey looks at him, he's like, "Oh crap, I do know this." So, so school is a full-on indoctrination system. Not to knock any teachers out there. You're beautiful. Thank you for teaching. Thank you for doing your best, but you're in a broken system. We got to change that system. If the kids aren't learning meditation and yoga and about their energy body and self-healing and self-hypnosis, and dude, even like my book, Zen Athlete, just that's basic stuff that we've known since like 60s. I didn't bring out anything new. I just kept it really clear and concise. Mm-hmm. So this is the way you reprogram your brain, because I was just aware enough to be like, this is wrong. I am not, I'm not being taught here to be liberated. Like, the human experience is not a 9-to-5 job. Hell no. I do not accept that. You know what I mean? And like, you know, I know there's more to this, and I found it, and I experienced it, and it's amazing. So, so yeah, so we have this indoctrination going on. You know, we have all these external forces. So we really got to learn how to tune in. Again, I'm rambling, so just if you want to just take some of those notes. But the real thing was just like, you know, really understanding that you've got to be your own master and really watch how you're being influenced.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I love when you get going, man. That amount of energy coming out, so sweet. Yeah, don't shut it off in any way. Yeah, being the captain of our own experience and realizing that it is a choice. And one of the things that I talk to so many people about, and I'm so glad you brought up the news. You know, it's everyone's personal preference what they choose to expose themselves to and experience. I never ever watch the news, mainly because I don't feel good when I watch the news. I haven't watched it for, I don't know, probably 10 years, more than that with any consistency, but I just don't feel good. I tune into my body within like 1 minute. And this is true for like a ton of different movies. I love movies, but certain ones I just won't watch because I just don't feel good. And not to say we can always avoid everything that doesn't feel good, but the things that we have a clear choice about, like you're saying, what food we put into our temple, what ideas we choose to take in, the people we choose to be around, what we can choose. It's a very, very simple thing. I noticed that with a lot of people, there's a lot of resistance to, and in myself in many ways too, I'm sure, a lot of resistance to really owning that, because what it means to own that is like, I can't blame anybody else for anything that's going on in my life at all. And if I can't blame anybody, it's my choice to change it. It's my responsibility, as you said, to change it. And most of us just haven't been taught how to do that in a healthy way. So we're walking around in the world unconsciously creating all our experiences, but thinking everybody else is dictating our experiences, and we blame and we judge and we throw all this energy around. And the bottom line is it feels shitty to do that. It doesn't feel good. And that's when we're talking about the body as a barometer. Your body will tell you, like, if you're in alignment with probably the direction you want to be going, if you want to call it your higher self or spirit or whatever, your body's going to tell you if you're in alignment with that just by how you feel. And that's one of the first things I always start with clients of mine is just like, what's your daily routine? Not because I want to create this harsh discipline for anybody, but just recognizing that probably a lot of the choices they're making are not helping them feel good. They're not helping them remember who they really are. And they're actually choices that cause more constriction than expansion. And the second piece is just remembering that, like, we do have control over so much of our life. Even if we're working a 9-to-5 job that we can't stand, even if we have all these circumstances that seem unchangeable, we have these little micro windows where we get to choose what we experience and how we experience it, and just starting to utilize those. So, like, for instance, one of the things I do and have a lot of people do is like have an alarm on your cell phone every hour, and the alarm just when it goes off says, "I am grateful," or "I love you." Just super simple, but it's just something to train your awareness back into the goodness in your life, back into the things you actually are excited to focus on. And so many of the times that alarm goes off, I'll be on Facebook or doing something else that just jumbles my energy and leaves me in an absolute mess. That alarm goes off and it just brings me right back into my heart. And it's like, okay, Tristan, like, let's choose something that's higher and feels better so you can be of more service to yourself and the rest of the world. So I like how you keep bringing it back to choosing to be one's own master, because whether or not we do choose that, we are our own master, and there's no one else is dictating anything for us. The sooner we realize that, and the sooner we take responsibility for our experiences, the sooner we change, the sooner we start to create a life we love, and we start to be of service in a much bigger way, and we start to do what we really came here to do.
Yeah, brother, totally vibe with all that. And what I wanted to kind of add was, you know, you talk about a lot in your work about self-love, which I think is super important, self-worth. So I shared this on the podcast the other day, and I was like hesitant about it. So I'll just share it again because I already did it, but it was important for me. I was just sitting in Sedona and I was driving. So I was just telling you, like, I had to sell my car, which is such a pain in the butt because I am so committed to what I'm doing and what I see. And I was like, you know what, I'll get another car. Things will will work out, but I tie my car into freedom. Freedom is my number one value in life. I want to be free. Mind, body, spirit is my number one thing. So take away my transport, now I am less free, you know? So it sucked. It was hard. But I did it. And so I've been like out in the States, and I borrowed my buddy's car to go get groceries. And I was just being so grateful for like, oh man, it's so nice to be in a car. I have this kind of motorized little bike that I took around in Sedona with too, which is pretty awesome. But I was in the car, and then I was driving back, and like I started to tear up, and I didn't know why. I was starting to cry. And then it just dawned on me from the podcast I was doing and the conversations I'm having in Sedona. And Sedona is its whole vortex of getting gong healing and crystal bowls and psychics, and just like it's like the hub of everything. So there's a lot of energies going around with amazing people. But it was just like a thought that came as like, you love yourself. Like, you're going home to do another podcast. Like, we see how hard it's like outside, we see how hard you're working, but you don't want to recognize how hard you're trying, so just take a moment and realize you love yourself. And I was like, oh shit, I do. And, it's like so weird, like to receive your own self-love, and I am really challenged with that. I want to change the wording around it and just not, I have a challenge with really receiving my own self-love. I'm great at dishing it out. I'm a ninja at dishing it out. So, help me, man. How do I allow myself to feel that love? Because I think that that's the number one thing. If we can do that, everything is possible. You know what I mean? Every single thing is possible once we can love and honor ourselves in the truest, deepest, non-narcissistic way. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing. And the way that I describe it is kind of like Burning Man. Burning Man, if you've ever been, it's like this most magical experience ever. Some people have challenging experiences because it's like a psychedelic ayahuasca experience, but you can get anything you need. Alcohol everywhere, but you can't get water. And you're in the middle of the desert, you're always running out of water. And so, if you go up to somebody and you're like, hey man, do you have some water? And they don't have any, you don't have any to give them, you can't offer it. But if you've got tons and tons of water, you can offer that. And that's how I see self-love. If you have not filled yourself up with self-love, you can't offer that. And that's like the most fundamental thing, maybe even beyond water. I don't know, they're close, probably water.
Way beyond water, I think.
So how do we, that's the most important thing, right? Because if you hate yourself, you can't spread love to someone else, right? Everybody usually doing the bad things or spreading the catalyst have this, non-acceptance and this hate for themselves. So the question, again, long-winded, we can't seem to help it today, is
perfect, bro. Don't worry.
how do I allow myself to experience more self-love and self-worth?
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head, man. I think that's the million-dollar question in the human experience, because as you said, when we are not in alignment, in loving alignment with ourselves, and we're harboring all these limiting beliefs and judgments about who we are, it so constricts the flow of energy through our body and through our whole system. It just throws everything out of whack. It's very difficult to function in an even remotely happy or loving or service-oriented way from that place. I want to quickly share, I've shared this story a couple times before, and I don't need to make it long-winded, but the darkest night of my soul that I've had was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and everything was crumbling in my life, relationship, livelihood, family life, just everything around me absolutely crumbling. And I was like crying myself to sleep every night in this room by myself, just feeling so shitty about myself, just so horrible. But I was still in this phase of projecting it onto all these other things around me. And if I wasn't projecting, I was just projecting to the future, like, well, if this doesn't change, what's going to happen in my life? Will this ever change? I'm never going to do all these stories. When I finally just sifted through by sheer force of will, because I just didn't have a lot of skills around this kind of stuff at the time, the piece under was just like, oh my God, I don't know how to love myself. Now, I did know how to love myself. I had just blocked that capacity, because we all know how. And one of the things I always tell people is when we're born into these bodies, we don't come in with self-hatred. We don't come in with this skewed perception of who we are, which means, we're coming straight from source, straight from spirit, or the non-physical, however you want to say that. And we don't come in with these self-limiting agendas, and we adopt them through our environment, through our parents. And like, God bless all of our parents. As a parent, I know myself, it's like I catch myself in very humbling moments all the time, showing my son stuff that like I don't want him learning, but it's just I haven't yet clarified that myself, just as my parents hadn't and yours. And we do the best we can as parents. So we end up inheriting this self-image that's just not, it's not true. And we go through this world acting on this on the false belief that we're not good enough or we're not worthy of love. Those are two sort of, they're almost the same thing, but they have a slightly different flavor. You break anybody's thing down far enough, that's going to be at the core of how they're functioning until that piece has been healed. So my life changed completely, and it changed just by identifying the fact that I wasn't showing up for myself lovingly. And it'd be a lot easier to just be like, okay, do this step, this step, this step, this step. You come into harmony with yourself, you start showing up in love. But a lot of the way this thing works is, in my experience thus far, is like, we have to become aware of the fact that there's a deficit or a block or some trauma that's hindering us from being aware of how fucking amazing we are, because we are, bottom line. But simply by becoming aware of that, it starts, in that awareness, it starts to allow things to move. So I'm a big proponent, like in general, I don't go in and start moving all these pieces around or demanding the people I work with, like, well, this is there and that's blocked, and you have to do this, and you have to unclear this chakra, and you have to do this. Like, there's a time and a place for all those pieces, of course, and I've done a ton of that, and I'll continue to do some of that. But really what I find most effective and that creates the most lasting change is just to actually look with a clear set of eyes at what's going on. Like, I haven't been showing up in the past for myself with self-love. And concurrent with that, or like next to that, is like, that's not my story. That's like my dad's story. That was his dad's story. And I inherited that just because I was around that. And something happens when we really see the truth of where that story comes from. And a story is not true. It's just a lot of things told over and over again, and it starts to be perceived as true, or at least consistent, let's say. So when we start to see the root of it, we start to naturally unplug our energy from it, because we can see, like, that's not who I am. Those thoughts or those beliefs are the product of these particular circumstances, the amalgamation of all these things I experienced, but they're not true. They're just these things that came together that I put a certain meaning on. So the short-winded way of saying that is, just simply by looking at it, things start to change. And I know that's like not a very satisfying answer for most people. It isn't for me either, or at least for a part of me. And I'm like, just fucking tell me how. So that's one, though, is just looking at it. The other, and it's really cool that you brought this up, is like, yeah, in a lot of ways, our capacity to be of service and to give is severely hampered if we're not giving to ourselves first in that self-loving, self-care way. But ironically, one of the ways to start feeling a lot better about yourself is to consciously start giving every day. So like the first thing that I say when I wake up, when my mind turns on, is thank you, and who can I help today? And it might sound corny, or it might sound cliched, or I don't know, it could sound any way to anybody. But why I ask that is because when I help somebody, and not help them in a like in a hierarchical, like I know more than you, so I'm going to show you, then teach you, and like boost me. I don't mean from that, but mostly what I mean by helping is just like, when I ask that question, inevitably somebody shows up in my day and in my life who, just by sharing what I'm feeling or what I've experienced, or just by showing up like with a smile and with love in my heart for that person, it changes their experience. They connect to themselves a little more easily. They start feeling better. And just by that occurring, I start to feel better. Because the reflection that happens is, I didn't go and like teach someone this long-winded like mental thing that I learned. I just showed up and I like smiled at someone, like I'm looking you in the eye, or like sort of looking you in the eye. And something happens as human beings when we're willing to really do that, and really willing to be with each other in this pure way. There's a resonance that starts to happen, and we do remember who we are on a deeper level beyond all these limiting beliefs. And it not only changes that person's day, usually it changes my day, because it reflects back to me like, wait a minute, I do have value and worth. And my value and worth isn't based on some book learning I have, or a job that I have, or doing this, that, and the other thing. My value is based on just me being me, because that's all I did in that situation. Does that make sense how I'm explaining that? Cool. So,
yeah, 100%.
Cool. And that's like, you know, I talk a lot about purpose with a capital P, my purpose for being here, all of our purpose for being here, because we all came here to do something really magical. And we all have a different magical thing that we're offering to the world. And it's why in my bio I say something about healing the world. Now, the world isn't actually like broken or in need of healing. Everything's perfect and we're all learning what we need to learn. But we can create more love in the world and a brighter experience for ourselves and others. That's what I mean by healing the world. And I think the way we do that is to simply show up as ourselves, to simply show up outside of all these limiting beliefs of who we think we are or what we're capable of, or just these really limited images and understanding of who we are. When we show up in an interaction, and it can be this interaction that means almost nothing, like it could be you and I just shooting the shit on the phone. But if either one of us decides to just show up in our heart and like outside all these stories, and it doesn't have to be some massive like spiritual revealing, just like you call me up and maybe I'm having a hard day, you're like, hey bro, it's Matt, how you doing? And I feel that, and you're just showing up as your bright self, nothing more, nothing less, just you. It automatically changes my life experience for the better, automatically. Whether I'm conscious of it or not, it does. And that's what I believe our real purpose is, man. It's just to show up as who we are, because we all come with these magical gifts. And the magical gift might be a skill set, but it might be just the particular alchemy of all the beautiful pieces that we are. And when we allow those things to actually come forth, they create incredible results in the outside world, not even by us doing a specific thing other than just showing up. So that's a huge part of what my journey has been, is getting out of my own way of like, well, I have to do A, B, or C to have value or worth in the world. And when I start to let go of that, and there's more to let go of for sure for all of us, and just start to show up in the world in service, like who can I help? And how am I going to help them? Just by being me. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to like be loving as much as I can in that moment, even if I'm feeling really down and depressed. And it starts to create different results in the world around us. And those different results start to tell a different story back to us about our self-worth and our self-value.
I love that, man. You touched on a lot of very powerful and grounded points. And I think that you definitely hit the nail on the head a bunch of times, where the lack of self-worth and self-love comes from the mind. It comes from programming and, negative thought forms. And I'm starting, again, Sedona is like the most out there place you're ever going to find on the planet. So, it's like, they're like, yeah, think about like negative thoughts as like entities, like an energy, it's like a vibration, and so it's kind of like peppered on you. And so my background was in the mind, and then I got into persuasion, and that because I looked at war. And so I looked at a very sophisticated system of mass persuasion. And so they're implanting. So I use this all the time in the podcast. So everybody on the podcast, don't imagine that I just gave you $1 trillion and you have $1 trillion to spend, and you're a magical wizard and you can do whatever you want in your life, and anything that you can think of, you can have on a dime. Usually I use a negative one, so I'm going to have to use a positive one, because the negative one just, it hits home more, because you have to imagine it to make sense of what I'm saying. So when you go and school is telling you this is reality and it's not, and then you look at TV, and then, they have the whole like CSI. What people don't understand is like, it's not just CSI. There's like it's a whole genre, and that takes up like a good percentage of all programming. And the unconscious underlying thing is you're going to get murdered. That's a whole thing. You know what I mean? Be afraid of going outside. Like, that's a whole thing that people can't see, that I can see so clearly. And I'm like, you mother effers, you sons of bitches. Ugh. Right? What if it was like, man, your neighbor next door is like a multi-dimensional wizard, and if you go into his house, he's going to serve you food, and you're going to have this amazing food. You've got these awesome crystals, and you're going to have a singing bowl, and it's going to be magical. Then the next guy down the street is this other magical wizard, And so we're not doing that. That's not the programming. Those aren't the thought forms going in. It's the different ones. So it's so simple. And when you're talking there, what it really reminded me of this ancient elder wisdom. So for those who listen to the podcast, they listen to David Lombear Senepas, And he is the native elder for the Mi'kmaq Nation, talking about star people, talking about in his nation, they knew about the star galaxies, star families. And what's really important on Earth is not to say, okay, we know the star families exist, but the wisdom from them and in our own culture is community. It's one-on-one contact. It's being present. It's getting in nature. These are our principal fundamental things. And as a society, we're not doing any of those. So I watched Clifford Mahooty speak, and he's the native elder, as I've mentioned on this podcast, for the Zuni Nation. Same exact message. We're aware of the star people. We're aware of these things. What the message is and what we've been doing for thousands of years is sitting in community, communing with nature, communing with each other. And this creates a vibrant resonance with the planet. And guess what? When you can do that, you can do this multidimensional thing. You can experience the multidimensional realm, but realize you're actually wanting to have a human experience. So you have this integration of both worlds, the world of spirit and the world of being human, which is super important. So they just talk about, one-on-one connection, why it's important to get in community, why it's important to have that face-to-face contact, nothing more, nothing less than showing up with an open heart. Yeah. And why, we're just such a disconnected society. So why does it need to be more complicated like that? And, I had a conversation with Clifford, and he's a really hard man to get a hold of. So I had this beautiful conversation, and you could see kind of like this, his eyes, man, holy smokes, like those things are galaxies. Mm-hmm. And, he's like, it's sad because, the kids, they don't care about our culture the same way, right? So now the Western society is really, as it has been, just destroying this thousands of years of lineage of some of the most beautiful cultures on the planet. And it's sad, but I think that this is what this shift is for, and the Zuni Nation knows it, the Mi'kmaq Nation knows it, I'm sure, and they have these council of elders, they all know it, but they're saying the same thing. So we really need to get together in community with our neighbors, with our friends, and show up, just show up. And we're all making a living, but show up for your friends, show up for your neighbors, show up for yourself, show up for your community, just be present, and that's it, man, that's it, and be of service. So so you're talking about doing something nice. David Lombard talks about doing 3 nice things. So what if you lived in a community of 100 people and one guy got up and did 3 nice things for his community, that ripple? What if everybody did that? Then it would be a harmonic community. But because we have so many people in a society, somehow we don't need to do that, and it's not important. What if we woke up and just did 1 nice thing? What if we just smiled at the person on the bus? So your vibration and your energy really does make a difference. Never forget that. And you can shift someone's day and life just by being present with a smile. And that's all you need to do, because we live in a complicated world, complicated galaxy that we're not going to fathom. So just keep it simple and mind your vibration, as my homie Michael Lozier likes to say. Yes. So your job is to get your vibration up to 100.
Exactly. Exactly. Keep priming that pump to keep that heart open and that vibration up. And like you were saying, man, in a seemingly complex experience, being in this world with so much stimuli flying all over the place, and most of it is not sending us a message of love and compassion, openness. There are these really simple things to do every day to just keep things open and flowing, and they're actually really fun to do. Like being outside in nature every day for a half hour, just taking a walk, and with no intention, not trying to figure anything out, just looking at trees and looking at my windows or doing this. It's like, it's so beautiful, man, just to take a second and breathe and watch the leaves and watch something immediately happens where we start to drop back into our heart and out of our head. Some sort of meditative practice every day. It doesn't have to be 2 hours. It can be 10 minutes. But of really just sitting there and breathing into the body, slowing down everything, doing those nice things every day, showing up for people, and not in a self-sacrificing way. We're not showing up for ourselves, but I also advocate for showing up for ourselves like we show up for other people, because that's really where the gap usually is. Usually we're actually quite willing to go do something nice. If a homie calls and it's like, hey, will you come help me out with this thing? Of course, no problem. We're pretty resistant and hesitant to even asking ourselves to show up for ourselves, let alone to answer the call. So I often recommend doing one really nice thing, consciously nice thing for yourself every day. And I often recommend treating it like you're taking someone out on a date and you want to make it the best day they've ever had, or the best hour of their life that they've ever had, but you're actually doing that for yourself. So it's like, I do that for my wife, but I also need to do that for myself. Like, what would make Tristan so happy, feel so loved today? oh man, I'm going to give him an hour of listening to an album that he loves and just laying on the floor, breathing or like whatever it is. But those things that I've just listed and that you were listing before, they're so simple. They don't require money. They don't require a lot of time. They don't require even most of the time leaving your house, because even just looking out the window can be enough. If you can see one tree, that can be enough. And all of those things slow us down enough to start to feel who we are a little bit more each time underneath all the programs and all the stories. And, something Abraham said to me that was really simple and really beautiful. And it's one of the few things I actually remember the words that they spoke, because the energy was so powerful. They're just reiterating, like, when we have a really beautiful, self-aware, quiet moment of expansive connection with spirit or life or whatever you want to say, when we get knocked out of alignment again and we're like cursing somebody out or worried about bills or worried about money or whatever, the scale doesn't go back to zero again. Every moment of awareness, every moment of self-love like builds upon itself. So it's cumulative. So another piece I think that's really important in all this is really, really being gentle with ourselves. Because if you're choosing self-awareness and self-love, in a way you're swimming against the current of a lot of what you're seeing around you. And we all get knocked off. We get knocked out of alignment. Every single one of us, no matter who it is, if we're in one of these bodies, we have moments that are less graceful. And that's where the shit really hits the fan for a lot of people, because they're like, oh, I had a great 2-hour meditation, and then I went and I did this, and I helped out, and I drank a green juice, and I was feeding my temple, I was feeding everybody in my community. But then that dude cut me off, and I was like cursing him out under my breath. Oh my God, I'm such a bad person. I'm not enlightened anymore. And it's just that moment where the self-judgment leaks in. That's the key, is like catching when that happens and just stepping outside and being like, you know what, I love you anyways. Not even anyways, I just love you. It doesn't matter if that happened. That's a beautiful piece of who you are, and you're clarifying it. And so all these simple ways to start to really remember who we truly are. And when we slow down and we focus the love that we're usually pretty willing to give to the outside world back onto ourselves. That's another practice that I give people, and a lot of teachers use something very similar. It's just like making the mantra, the inner mantra, whenever we can be aware, I love you, I love you, I love you, over and over again. And it, again, for some people it sounds corny or it just sounds like bullshit, but I can promise you from using it in my life that it has a huge effect. Because that's replacing some other thought that was saying like, you're a piece of shit because this happened in your life, or you're a bad friend because of this or that. We're replacing all these other thoughts with this really positive, beautiful message that does land just as much as every other piece of stimulation does.
Yeah, brother, beautiful. Well, that came, that reminds me, so I got a reading done. So there's this wizard, he gave me a book, and like he's this intuitive, and he talks to spirits actually. Again, Sedona is the mecca for that. So, but you can see in people's face, like, yeah, people in communities that do it. And the problem is a lot of people doing it don't have that same level of wisdom. Yeah. But, you got like Esther Hicks, Abraham, check her workout, like meet her in person. She's not messing around, There's a resonance to it, you know what I mean? And I've heard that room is resonant. Same with Bashar, there's like an energy there. Just like if you go to Dr. Joe Dispenza, like it's an energy there. Burning Man is an energy. It's a collective energy. It's palpable. You can feel it. So it gives me this reading out of nowhere, and it's like, all right, yeah, dude. And older gentlemen too. So I really do believe in native elder was not native, but elders, especially elders. You're not 60 years old giving tarot readings if you're not legit. Just would be very weird. But and so, and use discernment, because that being said, there are mother effers out there that don't even know what they're talking about. I call it white belts pretending they're black belts. Yeah. Just be like, hey, bro, I'm a white belt. I'm going to do a tarot reading, and this is what I feel. Take what you resonate with and disregard the rest. I'm going to do my best to be your mirror and open up and give you some love right now. Awesome. Do it up. Yes, please. I would love to reflect myself to you in an open being. That's it. So let's start there. Not like, let me do your tarot reading, and I'm going to tell you exactly who you are and what you need, and the angels coming in. Like, F you, man. You're not getting it. You know what I mean? For you. So
yeah, and that's, if I could jump in for a sec, man. I know you had a bigger point to make, just a laser point in that. Again, it's just getting back to what feels good and like trusting. We all have intuitive capacities and psychic capacities so far beyond what we could ever imagine. Even if you've never had one single instance of experiencing that yourself, you do. It's part of the human matrix. It's part of who you are. It's part of the design of this body and the energy field around it. And like you know what's best for you. And that's part of this practice of self-love, is starting to listen to that voice more. Just be like, I don't know why, but I don't feel drawn to get a reading from this guy. And I just feel like his energy is a little off, or it doesn't feel exciting to me. It doesn't feel good, or it feels threatening. I'm just like, thank you so much. And no, thank you. Anyhow.
Yes, 100%, man. Okay, so he's doing the reading, you know, being awesome. And so basically the big tip he gives me is basically around self-love. He's like, you give a lot of love. He's just like, I see you trying to help everybody around you. You know, you're doing a lot of work. And he's just like, but what do you want? And how do you love yourself? And I was like, oh no.
You got me.
Yeah, I know. I haven't sorted it. So one really amazing thing, and I do, you know, I do practices for sure, you know, that help me. But one thing that he said was just like, find a reason that you love yourself every day, and I want you to focus on it. That was just a big tip. Find one thing you love about yourself. And I want you to focus on that, and I want you to feel that. And then so what I'm thinking right now is like, okay, that's a really great piece of advice, but you got to do the work. I got to integrate it. I got to start doing that. And I started already. And so I found a few things and did it, and it felt really great. But then I'm understanding is we have this, so neurology, right? So we have these neurons in our mind, and we have these neural nets. And so I have this massive neural net around, you know, what my dad told me, and it wasn't bad. It was just around, you know, because I was a really out there kid, and like he couldn't understand what I'm like. I'm like a starseed, man. You know what I mean? My mind is like in the future, it's like crazy. Even my friends are just like, holy crap, Belair, like you really are something else, man. It's like they can't handle it. So my dad couldn't. So he kind of like, you know, limited it, like try to check me so I didn't get hurt, right? So it was like, it's not possible. I'm not good enough, all that kind of crap. So I have a massive neural net. So when I adopt a daily practice and figure out why I love myself and actually honor that practice, find something about myself that I love. So that's what I invite the listeners to. Find something about you that you love. And focus on that for a few minutes every day and really generate that feeling. What happens then in the mind is you're starting to create a new neural net. And so neural pruning is when you have this old system that's no longer needed, shedding the old, like a snake shedding its skin. Those neural connections of lack of self-worth, lack of self-love are going to start to fall away. And I'm going to start to encode a new system within myself that's self-love, that's self-worth, and that's going to help me with my receiving. Right. So again, another point that so I'm creating a neural network that's going to fire in my brain, that's going to create a different vibration within my cells in the body, which will give me a different human experience, because it has to. And it's that simple. So it's a really, really powerful concept. And there were some divine feminine ladies there, you know, that were really just, you know, doing the work and resonating at a high level. And what I noticed about them is like they were really great at receiving, and I suck at receiving. You know, they were like, oh, like
let's change that statement, homie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So you know,
maybe.
Yeah, appreciate that. So right, and that's why mirrors are good, and that's why, you know, I highly recommend coaches, but it's like a mirror keeping you accountable for when you slip up. So you know, I appreciate that. As we're saying, you're your own master, but I do have coaches. I highly recommend having coaches because it's a friend keeping you accountable with a high level of awareness, and we all need that support. So anyway, I just watched them really receive. You know, they were just like, it was a group, and like, thank you, and the girl's like, thank you, yeah. Then she's just loving it, and she's receiving the crap out of it. And like my go-to, which is old now, I'm gonna be like, yeah, thank you so much. It's like, oh no, don't look at me, you know.
That's not safe. Please stop.
Don't look, you know. So I gotta fix that for me, and I know that once I do, it's gonna change my outer world on a dime. So that's my rant. You can take that and run with it.
Well, and it's so powerful, man. It's so beautiful because it's so simple. I have a lot of people when someone's considering working with me, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, where they're like, well, it sounds awesome to replace these old limiting beliefs about myself with new, more expansive, more aligned ones that actually speak to the truth of who I am. But how do we do that? Like, how do you go in and remove an old thing? And I know a lot of people have a lot of systems for doing that, and a lot of inner mechanics for doing that. And maybe some of them are awesome, I don't know. But I know that it's really powerful to just do what you just said. which is just focus on something you love about yourself. Even if it's like, even if it's not even specifically about you, I just love how I feel when I'm in nature. And just spending 2 minutes a day thinking about what it feels like to be in nature, and a little bit of gratitude, like this little seed of gratitude is born, and then that starts to sprout. And that neural net that you're speaking of, and you put it really beautifully, it's automatically just replaced with more healthy, more aligned, more self-loving, and truer beliefs. And our thoughts are a huge key to doing that. You know, we have this mind and it's running all the time. So do we want to use it constructively, or do we want to use it to focus on all the stuff around us that seems and feels so out of whack, and focus on like what we don't want all the time? And that's what 99% of people are doing 99% of the time. And we can see the results that creates. You know, the proof is in the pudding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Yeah, 100% agree. And I think it's like we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of those are repetitive. So, you know, really and that's where mindfulness comes in with meditation and observing your thoughts. And that's where our free will is we live in this infinitely expanding universe, and things we don't like just give us catalysts for what we do like. You know, it's like, oh, so then we can focus over here. It's not saying it doesn't exist. It's saying I'm going to give my attention over here, because where I put my attention, I put my energy, my being, my spirit. And so wherever you put your attention, that's where you are, and that's what you're focusing on, and that's what you're going to get a little bit more of. So, yeah, man. Well, brother, you crushed this super hard. I really enjoy speaking with you. What I want to ask before we sign out here is just anything that you would have loved to talk about, anything that you wish that I had asked, or final thoughts for the listeners.
Thanks, man, for giving me that opportunity. I love the conversation as well. We went far-reaching. I think I want to reiterate something I think I said before, which is for anybody listening to this, you're already perfect. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing that's broken. It's just this little simple act of forgetting who you really are, because maybe you were in an environment that wasn't conducive to truly remembering. But you're here to create something so magical on planet Earth, and it's going to start in your life and ripple out. And I know I speak for Matt and myself, and it's like we believe in you, and you have way more support than you could possibly imagine. And that amazing thing that you're thinking about in your life that lights you up, I feel it in my body even talking about it. That thing that lights you up, that you know if you were doing that every day, you know how good you would feel, because you can feel it just thinking about it. That's part of what you're here to do. And just go do it. And if it's not possible to do that very thing right now, just take a tiny step towards it. And even if that step is just thinking about it and choosing to focus on that more than focusing on some of the challenges in your life. But I know I speak for Matt and myself and so many other people out there. Like, when we believe in you and you're here to create magic, and that magic is way beyond what your human mind can comprehend. So just take a step towards what you feel excited about, and Spirit is going to take many, many steps on your behalf towards you and towards that thing to support you. So all the support you require is here. So I want people to hear that as much as possible, even if it only sinks in 1%.
Beautiful, man. Amazing, powerful closing statement. And where can people find more about you if they want to get in contact with them about your work?
Thanks for asking, bro. So tristangutner.com. And just connect with me, reach out. I'll answer you personally. And I have some group programs, some one-on-one work. And whether or not you're interested in doing that, I just love to hear from you, hear what's going on in your life, and see what sort of magic we can co-create together, because I know you're here for something amazing. So.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much for being who you are, for doing the work, for smiling and doing your best in this dense dimension. Yeah, you're recognized, you're appreciated, you're loved, my friend. And thanks to everybody who listened. We're both simultaneously blessing you love, appreciation, support, connection, Team Earth. We're doing it. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Big shout out to Matt Belair too, bro. I just want to make sure, I want to take a moment for you to receive, since you said it's been a challenge in the past. You're creating magic. I know. Look at him getting so bashful. It's so sweet.
I can do it.
You are doing it currently. Man, you're creating something so beautiful with this podcast, and I know it's changing people's lives, and I just want to take a sec to see you and honor you, because I know it requires a lot of your energy, and it's a massive gift to a massive amount of people. And thank you for doing it. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, brother.
You're
Receive.
welcome.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It's good, right? You got to do baby steps. It's stuck in it.
You did great,
Baby
man.
steps, man. We're all doing it. Love you, bro. Thank you so
I
much.
love you too, man.
Take care, everyone.
Peace.